The morning mist slowly lifts over the hills of Gaul, unveiling a scene destined to host one of the most decisive confrontations in Roman history. On the horizon, the glint of Caesar's legion's steel meets the echo of Germanic war cries. At stake was more than the control of a territory. It was the affirmation of Rome's power in the face of a world that defied its authority. Gaul, divided into tribes often at odds with one another, had been the stage for a cautious yet methodical expansion by the Roman Republic. However, the arrival of Ariovistus, a fierce Germanic king, shifted the balance of power, leading a confederation of tribes that had crossed the Rhine. Ariovistus was not merely an invader. He was a symbol of the threat to Roman hegemony and the political future of Caesar himself. In this critical moment, Caesar, still solidifying his reputation as a military leader, faced a choice that would shape the course of history: to yield ground and risk Roman influence, or to directly confront Ariovistus's army, defying the odds on uncertain terrain. How would Caesar rise to this challenge and secure his position in Gaul? While Caesar was still savoring his victory over the Helvetii, a new threat was emerging to the north. Ariovistus, the leader of a Germanic coalition, had crossed the Rhine years earlier and conquered vast swathes of Gallic land, imposing his authority on local tribes. His methods were brutal yet effective. He subjugated the Gallic peoples through a combination of military might and political intimidation, all while strengthening his strategic position in the region. Ariovistus was no ordinary leader. Shrewd and aggressive, he expertly exploited the political fragmentation of Gaul. He demanded hostages from the Gallic tribes and ruled with an iron hand, consolidating his power while sending clear messages of his intent to remain in the territory. His arrival triggered a migratory movement of other Germanic tribes, further bolstering his forces. Unable to confront Ariovistus on their own, the Gauls turned to Rome for help. Caesar, sensing the opportunity, viewed their appeal as a legitimate justification to intervene. After all, the presence of a consolidated Germanic force in Gaul posed a direct threat not only to the region's stability, but also to Rome's prestige and authority. Before resorting to war, Caesar pursued diplomacy. He sent emissaries to negotiate with Ariovistus, but the Germanic leader rejected any compromise. Ariovistus argued that his right to occupy Gaul was earned through conquest, a rationale not unlike Rome's own expansionist methods. When direct negotiations between Caesar and Ariovistus took place, the tension was palpable. Caesar's Commentary de Bello Gallico recounts the encounter as fraught with distrust. Ariovistus stood firm, declaring that any Roman interference would be regarded as provocation. For Caesar, the failure of diplomacy was more than a setback. It was an opportunity to assert his political and military authority. He leveraged Ariovistus's statements to justify his next moves. Publicly, Caesar framed Ariovistus as a threat to the stability of Gaul and to Rome's allies, crafting a moral pretext for war. The situation escalated when Gallic tribes under Roman protection began suffering reprisals from Ariovistus's allies. Determined to showcase Rome's strength and solidify his role as Gaul's protector, Caesar mobilized his legions. He understood that defeating Ariovistus would not only be a military triumph, but also a critical step in cementing his reputation in Rome and legitimizing his campaigns. Caesar wasted no time after deciding to march against Ariovistus. He mobilized 6 legions, which, though well-trained, faced an enemy whose style of combat was both unfamiliar and feared. Stories of Germanic ferocity, reinforced by accounts from defeated Gallic tribes, circulated among the troops, fueling unease. News that Ariovistus had gathered a considerable force to confront the Romans in the Vosges only heightened the tension. Ever the strategist, Caesar understood that terrain would be a decisive factor. He advanced toward the Vosges Mountains, moving his troops with discipline, safeguarding supply lines and avoiding ambushes. The densely wooded hills and narrow valleys of the region could easily favor the Germanic style of combat: swift, uncoordinated, yet devastating attacks. To mitigate these risks, Caesar ordered his troops to construct fortifications along the way, creating secure points for rest and resupply. At the same time, he maintained constant communication with local Gallic tribes, leveraging his network of allies to gather intelligence on Ariovistus's movements and anticipate his strategies. Rumors about Germanic ferocity began to affect Roman morale. Many soldiers feared the towering, muscular warriors who were said to fight with an almost supernatural savagery. Distrust and apprehension spread, prompting Caesar to take decisive action to address the growing doubt before it undermined the entire army. In a display of his leadership, Caesar gathered his officers and soldiers for a rousing address. He reminded them of their previous victories, emphasizing Roman discipline and the power of organization over the brute strength of the Germans. Beyond that, he appealed to Roman pride, highlighting the historic role of their legions in overcoming supposedly invincible enemies. This speech not only restored confidence, but also reinforced the loyalty of his men. Caesar emphasized that victory would be achieved not by sheer force alone, but through superior strategy and the unwavering dedication of each legionary to the Roman cause. The choice of the Vosges as the battlefield was strategic. Ariovistus had positioned himself in an area with natural defensive advantages, hills that impeded an enemy's advance, and forests that allowed him to conceal portions of his troops. His forces, primarily Germanic warriors, were accustomed to swift and violent skirmishes, a style well suited to this environment. Caesar, however, relied on the flexibility and discipline of his legions. He studied the terrain carefully, identifying areas that could be exploited for strategic maneuvers or ambushes if the Germans made a careless move. The fortified camps constructed along the route reflected this meticulous approach, providing a secure foundation for the Roman advance and ensuring that every step toward confrontation was calculated. Dawn broke over the Vosges, revealing two armies positioned on opposite sides of a vast plain surrounded by hills and dense forests. Ariovistus had chosen the terrain with precision, placing his forces in a location that would hinder the organized advance of the Roman legions. His army, composed of fierce and impatient Germanic warriors, was eager for combat. On the other side, Caesar and his legions stood in disciplined silence, aware that victory would require more than bravery. It would be a test of strategy, endurance, and leadership. Caesar began the day by organizing his troops into a classic tripartite formation with the heavy infantry arranged in 3 lines. He positioned his auxiliary troops and cavalry on the flanks, aiming to protect the sides from the swift, aggressive attacks typical of the Germanic warriors. In the rear, he kept strategic reserves ready to reinforce any point that might falter. Ariovistus, meanwhile, placed his faith in the brute force of his warriors. He formed an extended line with his troops in an irregular array, preparing for an offensive that resembled a tide of men more than a cohesive formation. He believed the initial impact would crush the Roman lines, leveraging the Germanic momentum to spread panic and disorder. The battle began with skirmishes between the cavalry on the flanks. The Germanic forces, superior in numbers, attempted to push the Romans into disadvantageous positions. However, the Roman cavalry, bolstered by Gallic allies, held their ground, securing the legion's flanks. As the battle progressed, Ariovistus ordered a mass assault. His infantry surged forward like an unstoppable wave, shouting fiercely to intimidate the Roman. The clash was brutal. The Roman front line withstood the impact with their shields locked and gladi at the ready. The Germanic warriors used their physical strength to try to break the formation, while the Romans relied on discipline and the skill of fighting in close ranks. This was where Roman training demonstrated its superiority. The legionaries, in well-organized rows, moved in unison, alternating positions to maintain relentless pressure on the Germanic attackers. The testudo formation was employed at critical moments, providing resistance against particularly intense assaults. Meanwhile, Caesar observed the battlefield attentively, prepared to respond to any shift in momentum. He noticed that the Germanic forces were concentrating their attacks on the Roman center, leaving their own flanks exposed. Seizing the opportunity, Caesar ordered Crassus to lead the cavalry in a flanking maneuver. The young officer executed the maneuver with precision, striking the Germanic forces from the side and disrupting their formation. Crassus's attack was the turning point. With their line broken and their forces beginning to collapse, Ariovistus attempted to rally his men, but it was too late. Roman discipline prevailed, and the once impetuous Germanic warriors began to retreat. Ariovistus's withdrawal was chaotic. The Romans, seizing on the disorder, advanced with full force, driving the Germanic forces from the battlefield. Many warriors were killed during the pursuit, and Ariovistus, along with the survivors, fled back across the Rhine, marking the end of his threatening presence in Gaul. The battle was won, but at the cost of monumental effort. Caesar ensured his men rested and tended to the wounded while consolidating his position in the region. Fortifications were established to prevent future Germanic incursions, securing Roman dominance in Gaul and further cementing Caesar's reputation as a brilliant military commander. The triumph at Vosges marked a turning point in Caesar's campaign in Gaul. More than a military success, the victory over Ariovistus solidified his authority in the region and strengthened his position among both the Gauls and in Rome. The repercussions of the confrontation echoed throughout Gaul and beyond, shaping the course of Roman history in the years to come. Caesar skillfully capitalized on his victory at Vosges. He positioned himself not merely as an invincible military commander, but as the protector of Rome's Gallic ally. Tribes such as the Aedui and the Sequani, previously hesitant in their loyalty, now acknowledged Caesar as the central authority in the region. This local support was critical to the consolidation of Roman military operations, providing supplies, intelligence, and auxiliary troops. Furthermore, the impact of the victory was widely disseminated in Rome. Caesar sent detailed reports to the Senate, emphasizing the threat posed by Ariovistus and the necessity of decisive intervention. The success at Vosges not only justified his actions in Gaul, but also bolstered his political standing at a time when his influence was still being established. The defeat of Ariovistus significantly weakened the Germanic presence beyond the Rhine. Many of his allies abandoned any ambitions of settling in Gaul, while other tribes withdrew to avoid direct conflict with Rome. This created an opening for Caesar to fortify Rome's borders and establish a more permanent presence in the region. Caesar's strategy for consolidating control over Gaul combined diplomacy with military strength. He negotiated strategic alliances with local tribes while swiftly and decisively suppressing any resistance. This balance between cooperation and repression proved essential for maintaining stability in the region in the years that followed. The Battle of Vosges also served as a prelude to Caesar's future campaigns. With the Germanic threat neutralized, he was free to turn his attention to the independent Gallic tribes that still resisted Roman authority. His subsequent victories were directly informed by the experience gained at Vosges, where he demonstrated the effectiveness of Roman discipline against the brute force and ferocity of his enemies. Moreover, the confrontation cemented Caesar's reputation as a brilliant strategist and an inspiring leader. He not only successfully confronted an external threat, but also transformed the challenge into an opportunity to expand Rome's influence and build his own political and military power base. The Battle of Vosges was not merely another clash in the Gallic Wars. It symbolized the delicate balance between personal ambition and public duty, hallmarks of Julius Caesar's character. The victory solidified Roman authority in Gaul and paved the way for complete domination of the region. It also showcased Caesar's strategic brilliance in turning seemingly insurmountable challenges into opportunities for expansion and prestige. The defeat of Ariovistus and the expulsion of Germanic forces marked the beginning of a new era for Rome in Gaul. Caesar demonstrated that the combination of military discipline, charismatic leadership, and a deep understanding of political dynamics could overcome adversaries that initially seemed invincible. This moment also underscored the triumph of strategy over brute strength. While Ariovistus relied on numbers and ferocity, Caesar employed refined tactics and meticulous coordination of his legions. This contrast not only secured victory, but also provided a lasting example of Roman military superiority. Moreover, the psychological impact of this battle cannot be overstated. The victory reinforced the confidence of Roman legions in their commander and demoralized both the Germans and the Gauls, who still entertained thoughts of resisting Rome. Caesar's carefully controlled narrative of the conflict ensured additional political support and resources from Rome for his subsequent campaigns. The story of the Battle of Vosges is a timeless example of how courage, strategy, and leadership can shape the course of history. But what would you have done in Caesar's place? Would you have risked a direct confrontation with Ariovistus, or pursued alternative strategies to secure Roman influence? If you're eager to delve deeper into epic battles and uncover how decisions shaped empires and civilizations, subscribe to our channel. Each video is a journey through the tactics, personalities, and events that defined ancient history. Now we want to hear from you. Which battle do you consider the most impactful in Rome's rise to power? Share your thoughts in the comments below and join the discussion. And don't forget to share this video with fellow history enthusiasts.